have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Anybody got any Timberwolves news?
Why, yes, we do, Judd. Welcome
Awesome.
to a Monday, latest Wolves news edition of Flagrant Howls here, where we will put a bow on KD Watch 2025. And for those of you that have just been nauseated by the idea of KD or sick of us talking about it, this will be the last fragment that we do. And we're going to springboard into, I have a handful of, it's clear, they were aggressively going after a generational bucket getter. They would clearly like to put a bucket getter next to Anthony Edwards. So you now have two bucket getters who can pass to other guys who can make shots, guy who can initiate some offense. So I have a handful of names that have been bandied about among various credible reports that they could pivot to here in the next couple of days. But a shout out to Neos Elite Performance here. If you're 37 years old and looking to play like you did when you were 28, Judd, who should you talk to?
Oh, KD, I got some advice for you. You want to contact the folks at Neos Elite Performance, because if you've got chronic pain, the bad knees, the bad back, holding you back, or you know what, if you were a weekend golfer who can't get on the course now, this also applies to you, because Neos uses cutting-edge regenerative medicine and cellular IV therapy that's designed to get you going again without invasive procedures. This white glove service means there's no trips to a doctor's, there's no trips to a hospital. They are going to come to you. They are going to get you back on the golf course, on the court in KD's case, perhaps playing 82 games for the Rockets next season. Who knows? Neos Elite's therapies are going to reduce that pain. Also, if you reference our flagship show, Purple Daily, you're going to get $500 off a cellular IV therapy treatment. That's right, $500 off. No surgery, no downtime, just results from your friends at neoselite.com, neoselite.com.
Boo his ass. Boo his ass. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to be in Minnesota. He confirmed, too, in an interview, because he was on stage at Fanatics Fest when that trade went down. And then he jumped on and did an interview with Kay Adams afterwards, and he basically said, yeah, I got to control the process. I gave them a list of teams that I wanted to go to, so the Timberwolves were not on that list. And maybe they wind up dodging a bullet here, because all the consternation about a 37-year-old, you have to lock into age 38, 39. Also, it's not like KD has been, for as much as teams have given up for him over the past handful of years, it's not like he's been a driving force for great playoff success since he left Golden State. So, it was always kind of a risk and a mixed bag of what you might actually be buying. But now the decision has been essentially taken out of their hands. And it wound up being KD to the Rockets and the Miami Heat being the runner-up, according to Shams, with the Suns receiving 24-year-old former number 2 overall pick, shooting guard Jalen Green, 20 points per game. Not the most efficient guy, but good, young, talented player with some upside still. Dylan Brooks, the number 10 overall pick, and then 5 second-round picks. And even this morning, Windhorst was on ESPN saying the Timberwolves had a better offer on the table and could have made this trade if they were willing to ignore Kevin, because Kevin Durant did not have a no-trade clause. Right. He said once the Wolves got wind that, hey, he doesn't want to be in Minnesota, they just kind of backed off and have, I'm assuming, in the shadows and the darkness, Tim Connelly's been looking at other plans.
I was going to say, I wonder how quickly Connelly backed off, because once it got out there that the Wolves were intrigued, we were all going to talk about it until the trade was done, and obviously it was done on Sunday. Yeah. But I do wonder, because I don't see Connelly having a lot of patience for that. Like, I would not be surprised if we find out that he was out 2 weeks ago, because it was going, once it got out, it was going to linger regardless. But I don't see Connelly as being a beggar, like, oh, please come here, please come here. Yeah. So I don't think Connelly came close to doing something that would have been detrimental. And if you're going to give up that much, I could easily see Connelly having made the point, okay, I'm not going to give up that much for a guy who does not want to be here, and B, a guy who's not going to sign an extension here. So it's 1 year of KD for what? That's a pretty big price, potentially.
Yeah. And there would have been, actually, if you played that out and he only does the 1 year and you don't do the extension, so then you lose the salary slot to trade him again or get value.
Yeah.
Assuming that Julius Randle wouldn't have been signed to an extension and maybe Gobert goes out in the trade, you would have actually been like $50 million under the salary cap for 2026-27 summer, which would have been an interesting spot to be in for the first time in a long time. But I think we can put the KD watch stuff to bed here, unless you guys want to drag it out even longer after 2 weeks. I'm willing to.
I want to talk Rockets.
Let this be the last we ever talk
Let's
about
talk
Kevin
Rockets.
Durant. Let's look forward. Let's turn our eyes to what they could do this week. Okay.
Hey, Phil, is that Timberwolves news I see?
It's not necessarily news. It's news mixed with reckless speculation,
Oh.
Judd. That's right.
Reckless
So happy.
speculation.
So Tim Connolly has been cooking up other scenarios. There's probably 15 other things on a whiteboard, his brilliant mind working, probably not sleeping for the last 2-3 weeks. And so what we know is they aggressively pursued a generational bucket getter, right? Kevin Durant, they said, of all the things we could do here to help Anthony Edwards and help this team, we need to be more potent offensively, and we need someone that can just take some pressure off Anthony Edwards if he's getting doubled and blitzed. Like, okay, do that at your own peril, because this guy over here can get the ball and do anything he wants with it. So I'm looking at a list of 4 or 5 guys that could either get a bucket or could be a ball handler, a point guard, but someone in that category of another initiator of offense who can also score a bunch of points. So that's option 1 right now. They kind of had 2 options. Option 1 is pivot to somebody else and make a trade, and then we'll get to option 2 here after that. But I want to throw 4 or 5 names at you that have been bandied about in reports, either credibly or just like educated speculation that they could be available or are available via trade. And maybe these aren't quite the Kevin Durant level efficient scorers, but they could be running mates for Anthony Edwards in that backcourt, okay?
All right.
Name number 1, De'Aaron Fox from the San Antonio Spurs. 27 years old. He makes $37 million this upcoming season on an expiring contract. So it's time to figure out if you're the Spurs. You just made this trade back in February. When they made that trade, the Spurs were nowhere near picking number 2 overall in the draft. They got lucky in the draft lottery, and now they're slotted number 2. And circumstances have kind of changed for them going forward as to what their strategy might be, because the consensus number 2 pick in this draft is Dylan Harper, who is one of the stud guards in the country from Rutgers. The Spurs also have rookie point guard Stephon Castle, so they are loaded at that position. Do the Spurs want to commit long-term for $40-50 million a year to 27-year-old De'Aaron Fox when they've got these younger players that maybe fit Wemby's timeline a little bit better? Maybe there's some growing pains for a couple years, but do they put together a younger nucleus that can grow with Wemby? So that's the impetus for why the Spurs, why would the Spurs, they just made the trade. Well, when they made the trade, their circumstances were different in terms of their number 2 overall pick.
Right.
Fox can score at every level. He was actually 9th in scoring average 2 years ago. Last year, he was traded midseason. He had wrist issues all year, and so he was a little bit off his game offensively. But 2 years ago, he was ahead of Anthony Edwards in scoring average. He was 9th in the NBA. So this would be a guy that you could put right in there with Anthony Edwards as one of the most electric offensive duos backcourt in the entire league.
And Conley was calling on Fox when the Spurs trade went down, correct?
Those were the reports. Yep.
Yeah. So I would say that's a definite possibility, Dex.
And then because it's a contract year for him, right? So $37 million, and then he's a free agent. So is it likely if you were to acquire, let's say the Wolves got Fox this summer, would an extension probably happen pretty damn soon then?
Yeah, he is extension eligible, and so I think you'd essentially be trading for him and then committing to like a 4-year ridiculous contract and just saying, all right, let's do this, let's push forward with this. Now again, to get him, you'd have to give up either Rudy Gobert, $35 million, so that would get you there from a salary matching standpoint, and then something else. What would the Spurs want? The Spurs are loaded with young talent, and they've got draft picks.
Gobert and Wemby.
Yeah.
Oh my! Well, there might be a third team. You might route Gobert.
The thought just crossed my mind.
I know.
I mean,
that was the first thing.
It'd be hilarious. So yeah, I mean, I think you'd probably be committing to a long-term extension. So you'd have to be pretty sure that this is going to be a long-term partnership, because whatever move you make next, it could be the Anthony Edwards Timberwolves defining personnel move, because Ant is emerging into his prime now. So you could strap a rocket to him and the team's back for the next 5 years, or you could do something that creates a falling out and a malcontent. And so it's a bit of a high wire act here.
Okay.
Okay, number 2, in no particular order here, but like the second guy on this list, Darius Garland from the Cleveland Cavaliers, 25 years old. He's set to make $39 million this upcoming season, and he's under contract for 3 more seasons total. So you get him for 3 more years to his age 28 season, then he'd be eligible for free agency or another extension. Now, he's out 5 months with toe surgery, so you'd have to be pretty sure that he's going to bounce back, be ready. I don't think it's imperative that he be ready for the first game of the season necessarily to make this trade, because it's more of a 3-year, 5-year arc trade. But why would the Cavs trade a 25-year-old bucket-getting gunner?
Yeah.
Well, the Cavs have had one of the best regular season teams in the NBA for the last 3 years, and they don't have any trips to the Eastern Conference Finals to show for it. So there's been some itching to shake up that roster based on reports and rumblings that this is a really good regular season thing, but something needs to change for them to take a step deeper in the playoffs. And also, the Cavs are $5 million into the second apron, so it would benefit them to maybe move out $39 million Garland number and take on something less to get underneath the second apron. But Garland is an awesome offensive player, very efficient. He has a mid-range game. He can shoot threes, and he would be an excellent running mate to take some pressure off Anthony Edwards.
The Cavs thing is interesting because, the Halliburton injury, just an absolute horrible situation yesterday. But you look at the rest of the East, and if you're a Cavs fan, and the parallels here to me are kind of hilarious. It kind of reminds me of if they want to run this back one more time, the Cavs. So you know what? Screw it. We're not going to make additions. The state of the conference is pretty weak. We feel like we're probably one of the best teams right now in the conference. That's a legitimate path. But it is also in a similar universe, very Twins-like. Well, if all of our guys are healthy and there, and when they're on the court, we actually have a really good path here to potentially be one of the 3 best teams in our respective league conference. I think the Cavs lean that they might run this back, but I understand where when you have all this regular season success and you can't really even get to game 6 or 7 of the semifinals, that can be a very frustrating thing.
Yeah, to that point, the East is different because Tatum's probably out for the year and Halliburton's probably out for the year. So if you are the Knicks or the Cavs, are you looking and saying, maybe we shouldn't? Well, I was going to say maybe we shouldn't overreact. The Knicks already fired Tom Thibodeau, so they definitely already overreacted.
Right. On Garland, because it sounds like there's an expectation he's certainly going to miss part of the coming season. What's the price tag there, too? Are you paying full price for a guy? Because I do get very concerned about foot problems and toes, which are incredibly important in sports such as basketball. So I guess I have a lot of trepidation based on that.
Yeah, on the medical side, I would just trust that you got enough smart people. Is that a major risk that you'd be taking on, or is it just like, hey, it's a pretty routine surgery? So that I'll put that part of the conversation separate. I think you would be paying more in terms of assets for 3 years of a 25-year-old Darius Garland than you would for 1 year of De'Aaron Fox, or there's a couple other players on this list that have expiring contracts. So I think 25 years old, it is a lot of money, but it's not $55 million. You can acquire Darius Garland for $15 million less in terms of cap ramifications than Kevin Durant, and he's 12 years younger.
Yep. Maybe
he's not the guy that Kevin Durant has been, but there's value in that contract for sure. You're getting him for 3 years team control. So interesting one there, and he's been bandied about. Another guy here, Coby White from the Chicago Bulls. Another 25-year-old, $13 million this upcoming season. So he is, based on his scoring productivity, he is one of the most team-friendly contracts, but it's an expiring deal, and he's eligible for an extension, so you'd be probably like De'Aaron Fox, all right, you're not going to make that trade unless you're going to extend him and give him a massive contract of some kind. Why would the Bulls trade a young, talented point guard, shooting guard combo like Coby White? Well, expiring contract is one. So, if it's up to him, too, if he doesn't want to play in Chicago, whatever. The Bulls are also just in a general state of flux. I feel like every year they're just like
I was gonna say they trade him because they're the Bulls.
Yeah, and they've got some other interesting young talent, shooting guards too. But he's a 6'5" guard, big time scorer. In fact, down the stretch, remember the Bulls just randomly were the hottest team in the NBA for like a month, and they almost got themselves. They went all the way through. They finished almost 500 after being buried, and Coby White had a bunch of like 30, 35, 39-point games in the last month of the season. He's killed the Wolves a couple times. But you would have a guy there that, hey, you're looking for someone that can also pour in 28 or 32 points on any given night. And Coby White has been very much that guy in Chicago.
Given the present circumstances, I am more intrigued by White than Garland right now.
Okay.
And he's
definitely
this.
Bigger. Like the 6'5" thing
like
fits
him.
the Tim Connolly.
I've seen him create problems for the Wolves, both home and road. I like him a lot. And he feels like the type of guy that you could get out of Chicago just because the Bulls do business in a very odd way. And he also feels like a guy who would welcome being traded here for the chance to play with Ant. Just because Durant didn't want to come here does not mean that a bunch of guys are like, I'm not going to. Like, you've got a generational star. You've got a team that now, and I'm sure we'll discuss this, is going to be owned by what appears to be very aggressive, competent people, or at least aggressive. You've got a team that's been to back-to-back Western Conference finals. So the fact that Durant balked, to me, is not at all a reflection of how a lot of players probably feel about the Wolves.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I know at times we're even getting away from like positionless, this guy is a point guard, this guy is a shooting guard. We're a little bit away from that. Would Coby White be your starting point? I mean, he's played some point and some shooting guard in Chicago, so he would be your facilitator. He'd be your point guard on this team.
Is he like is he going to dish 11 assists like Trae Young does every night? Is he a pure traditional point guard like Mike Conley? Not necessarily, but he can definitely dish. He can definitely handle. And I think you would. Maybe you're giving up a little bit of like floor general Mike Conley, but you're getting this. I mean, Mike Conley can't score 10 points in a playoff game. So, I think Coby White would be, if Conley's still on the team, like your third or fourth best ball handler. Dillingham has some handles too. And then Anthony Edwards, it kind of depends. Anthony Edwards has a much tighter handle than he did 2 or 3 years ago, but still has some work to do. So he'd be like in your top 3 or 4 for guys that can handle the ball for sure.
But if they collapse on Ant, Coby can dagger you.
100%.
Which is sort of what they've been missing, right?
Dude,
like that.
I'm telling
that's
you,
what
like,
they want. So
this
I really
dude,
like him.
When he's been given, and the last couple of years, like he's been given 33, 36 minutes a night to be out there. And if you look, it's a fun exercise. Literally pull up his game log when the Chicago Bulls started going on that run in like early March. It was a win at Orlando, 125-123, that kind of started them off. Then they beat Miami, and then they just went on they won like, was it 14 of their last 18 games or something? And here is Coby White's game logs. 44, 20, these are just points. 21, 29, 31, 23, 26, 24, 35, 36, 37, 31, 37, 18. So, like, there's not a guy like that. Randall could score some points, but there's not a guy like that you would say, oh, yeah, he's going to get 28 points tonight.
Agreed.
So, okay, a couple other names here. These are bucket getters that the Wolves could potentially trade for. Their names have been floated about. Colin Sexton with the Utah Jazz, 26 years old, $19 million this season, and then expiring contract. So he's been around for like 7 or 8 years. He was with the Cavs for a while, and then Utah. He's been on some bad teams. Why would the Jazz trade a good, talented 26-year-old bucket getter? Well, expiring contract for one. Number two, there's just been a gazillion reports that he's on the table by reporters that credibly cover that team and the NBA at large. And so, maybe they're looking at a 26-year-old, a team that's nowhere near contending, and saying, that's actually a little older than we are interested in. Yeah. We're not going to sign him to a big contract, so we'd rather get some value in a trade. But he's a really high-end, efficient scorer. In fact, Colin Sexton, if you plugged him onto the Timberwolves, would have the highest true shooting percentage of any Timberwolves player except for Rudy Gobert, who only takes dunks for shots. So like Rudy has a really high true shooting percentage, not because he's a highly skilled offensive player, but because all of his shots come from point blank range. Now, Colin Sexton probably has the weakest defensive track record of all these options we've talked about so far, but he's been on some bad teams too. So if you put him with a good high-end defensive team and a bunch of perimeter players who lock down on defense and take it seriously, culturally the Wolves lean into defense. Is there some more defensive upside there that you just don't tap into when you play for crappy Utah Jazz teams? But Colin Sexton is on this list for sure, and probably would cost you the least amount of any of these players in a trade. I think it's just my own opinion.
Sure. And I mean, Conley's made trades with the Jazz previously. Now the Jazz are now, their GM is now Danny Ainge's kid, I think, which is a new thing. But yeah, I mean, so would that trade involve more? Not that the Wolves have a ton of draft picks, but would that trade involve more draft picks? Or what do the Jazz? I mean, the Jazz's wants and needs are going to be very different than some other teams.
It's so hard because this would almost certainly be part of a multi-way 3 or 4 team deal where the Jazz are helping to facilitate, and some of it depends on what do the Jazz want to do, because they've come out and said, Danny Ainge came out and said a few months ago or like a month or two ago that we're done with the tanking. We're going to try and win and go forward. But then there's all these rumors that they're going to trade like Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton, some of these good offensive players. So we don't know what the Jazz are planning on doing. Maybe if they're trying to win, would they be interested in like Julius Randle in a sign and trade? Like here's a good established player. So, I mean, hell, would they want Rudy back? I legitimately don't. Wow. We don't know what the Jazz
Send Rudy home.
I mean, if they want to win. Home. If they want to win, and I think it would probably involve another player coming to the Wolves too, because the $19 million number for Sexton is way less than like Rudy's 35 and Randall's 30.9. You're not trading Jaden in a deal for Colin Sexton, so you'd probably need something else either from the Jazz or another team coming to the Wolves as like salary filler. So this would get a little more complicated.
I wonder if the Jazz would ask for it or try to insist on Dillingham or Shannon.
It's possible. Yeah.
Not both.
They're going to want something.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, would you go with the 17th overall pick and something for Sexton? It's if you wound up with Sexton and didn't have to give up a bunch in value, and now you've got a guy that can pour in 20 points once in a while efficiently next to Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
Just something to keep an eye on. And then I'll throw this name out, even though I don't know, Derek White. I think Derek White would be the holy grail of all these options from the Celtics. And we've talked about him a few times on this podcast, but he's 31 years old, so he's a little on the older end. These other guys we're talking about are 26, 25, 27. Derek White is 31. He's set to make $28 million this season, and he's under contract for 4 more seasons. It is one of the most team-friendly, if you're just looking at the value he provides for the money he costs compared to the max and supermax guys. It's probably one of the more team-friendly contracts in the entire league. But why would the Celtics trade him? I don't think they should, to be honest with you. But they are $20 million over the second apron. Jason Tatum is out for the year. So if the Celtics feel like, we're not going to be terrible, we're probably not going to win a championship this upcoming season.
This could be a great trade for them.
The next time that we are able to win a championship is when Derek White is 33 years old. Do we get out in front of this and get some value? The question there would be, what would you have to give up? Because if they made him available, there's other teams that would be like, we'll give you 3 future first-round picks and a good player or 2. So could you get away with giving up, like, it would probably have to be, I don't know if it's Dillingham or Terrence Shannon Jr., but someone who's like young and would be cheap and the Celtics would plug them into the rotation.
Yep. And
then like the 17th, the 31st, help them get out from underneath the second apron hell that they've entered in here to 2025-26. But Derek White is probably the holy grail on this list. Just seems unrealistic.
If you look at his age, though, and contract, it does make some sense to trade him now. But back to your point about the asking price, I think that's the problem. Because I think that's one where the Celtics would actually start by asking for Jaden, you'd say no, but that would set like the parameter, right? And then you'd go to, okay, Shannon, Dillingham. Like, I feel like that trade is probably more difficult because the Celtics are going to need to in some way feel that they come away from that trade winning it.
Yeah, I think, and the Celtics have like Porzingis. They have other. I think Drew Holiday makes the most sense for them to trade because, per my logic before, Drew Holiday's 34 and makes more money than Derek White. The next time that the Celtics are going to be championship contenders is going to be in 2 years when Drew Holiday is 36.
Yeah.
So if you're them, I think you would prioritize a Drew Holiday trade, but Derek White would land you more assets than a 34-year-old Drew Holiday. So that's what they're probably trying to weigh. But in any event, they're going to want to shed at least $20 million. So therefore, Jaden McDaniels wouldn't be a fit. Like, he'd be a fit for their team, obviously, but in terms of salary matching, I think what they're going to want are maybe some draft assets and like a younger player that doesn't cost that much. So that would point you more to a Dillingham or a Terrence Shannon Jr. or a third or fourth team that has those assets, and you go around that complicated merry-go-round. So I saw my guy Ross Brendel, our guy Ross Brendel, hit me up on Teams with a Trae Young, adding Trae Young to this discussion earlier this morning when we were kicking around ideas. I don't know, man. Like, there's some weird. First of all, he'd be super expensive to acquire in terms of salary and probably what you'd have to give up.
Yeah.
He's so small. He feels more like a fun all-star game player than a guy that's going to be helping you drive a championship bus.
Right.
But he also is a great facilitator who's led the league in assists. He's a bucket getter, obviously. A little bit inefficient compared to some of the other guys that might be on this list.
Here's my question on him. Is he a playoff player with that size?
It's so tough. Yeah.
Because, I mean, we are talking about
6'1".
Like, we are not talking about, okay, over the course of an 82-game season, what can you do? We're talking about the grind of the playoffs. And that's where I don't know that a guy, I'm not saying he's not a really good player, but I don't know that a guy like that is the perfect fit. Off of your list, I think the two names where it would be doable and I would actually be excited are Coby White and De'Aaron Fox.
I would say I'm going to take Derek White off the doable list. He's more of a pipe dream.
Right, because it's hard. I agree.
If I had to rank these, I'd probably put De'Aaron Fox 1. But Darius Garland. I'd probably put Darius Garland number 2 and Coby White 3. Although I like this, like Coby White, Connolly he built the Nuggets to be big. He built the Wolves to be big, right? So I don't know, Conley, Jamal Murray's kind of smallish and Conley's been small, but that's where like Coby White, who's 6'5", and now your starting lineup, the smallest guy would be 6'5". Him and Ant are both like 6'5", basically. So yeah, and there's probably some names. I'm sure Tim Connolly sitting in his dimly lit office with some smooth jazz in the background.
You got candles going?
Little cocktail, yeah.
Yacht rock and candles.
Dude, I played golf with a guy over the weekend at this bachelor party that I'd never met before, and this was the second round of golf, and he said, "You guys have any music selections?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, could you put on some yacht rock?" Point blank, what's yacht rock?
You get out of your house. You got to get out of your house.
What's yacht rock? And I said, you know it when you hear it. That's literally how I responded. I said, you know it when you hear it. I said, give me your phone. I was like, give me your phone.
It's a vibe.
Oh, I got you.
He didn't know what it was. How old was this dude?
33, 32 years old, same age as me.
Okay, that's a major.
Yep.
No.
I would have gone home at that point, Declan.
I feel like if you've never dabbled,
Peace out.
Yeah, it was strike one on the bachelor party trip of, oh, this guy doesn't know yacht rock.
Yeah.
I gotta get home.
yeah, if you haven't dabbled in the yacht rock lifestyle, I feel like your life is probably incomplete.
How do you not know it though? Like I could see if his response was, "Oh yeah, I don't really enjoy it." Like that's another thing, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, he's missing out, man. He's missing out on the sultry tones of Michael McDonald. He's missing out on some Christopher Cross, some Kenny Loggins. But yes, that's what Tim Connolly is listening to in his office right now as he concocts trades in the darkness. So we'll see what the draft is tomorrow night. We have more here to get to on this latest Wolves news edition of Flagrant Howls.
I love Timberwolves news.
Yeah, so do we, Judd. We also love Safe Side Barbecue this time of year. It's barbecue season, baby. Let's party.
Absolutely true. And if we're talking about the best barbecue food truck in the West Metro, folks, right there, fresh brisket cut to order, 100% firewood smoking for juicy, savory, tender meat. How good does that look right now? Everything, by the way, homemade. The bread right there, made to order with your sandwiches. That's right. Find them at safesidebbq.com and on Facebook for where they will have their truck next. Also, if you find their locations right there and you go and check them out, you do not have to go into the brewery that they're at. You can take it home, enjoy it outside. Safe Side Barbecue. We're talking brisket here. Brisket in this town, you don't find it a ton. This is the good stuff. Again, safesidebbq.com to find their location.
It's also air conditioning season. MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning is.
Now, the past 2 days were a tutorial. We're a tutorial on why it's so important that your AC is running efficiently. We have a reprieve now, so if your AC was a little bit on the fritz or not going great, our friends at MSP have a $49 AC tune-up, and they're also going to give you a BOGO air quality bundle, which is a pristine electronic air cleaner and a UV light for the price of one. They are going to get your house nice and cool so you never have to suffer through what we did the past 2 days. Also, they're partnering with the Open Door, which is a hunger relief organization, providing food to more than 20,000 people a month. MSP will be collecting brown paper bags during their HVAC and plumbing calls. Call them at 651-615-4292 or go to their website, callmsp.com. Callmsp.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the past 2 days, if that didn't tell you, okay, my AC needs to be really good, nothing will. $49. Call msp.com.
Who wants more Timberwolves news? I know I do. We have a statement from Glenn Taylor here. So it is expected, by the way, that I think either today, tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, we're going to get the official NBA owners vote. 75% is what's needed to put Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry as the majority owners of the Minnesota Timberwolves. So everyone's there. We'll also get to some big C-level news from Friday, like all the writing's on the wall here. There's already leadership changes behind the scenes. But Glenn Taylor and Becky Taylor put out a statement here on NBA.com. Thank you, Minnesota. I'm just going to read this to you guys. You can react emotionally. After 30 unforgettable years, our time as owners of the Timberwolves and Lynx has come to a close. This marks the end of an extraordinary chapter in our lives, one filled with purpose, pride, and deep connection. When we kept the Timberwolves from moving to New Orleans in 1994,
don't forget it.
We did so with the hope of building something that could unite people across Minnesota and beyond. And when we added the Lynx in 1998, it was driven by our belief in supporting women and fully embracing the diversity and promise of the WNBA. Thank you to my limited partners for going in on this journey together. And he lists all the rich people. Thank you to the players who wore the jerseys with heart and determination. Thank you to the staff who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Thank you to the corporate community and community partners who support us through the years. And most of all, thank you to the fans. Your passion has been the soul of this organization. You welcomed us into your homes, your lives, your hearts. The roar of Target Center, the sea of jerseys in the stands, the shared highs and lows, and the belief in what we could accomplish together. It's all been nothing short of remarkable. Though we are stepping away as owners, our love for this organization and this community remains as strong as ever. We will always be fans, cheering from our seats, celebrating your triumphs, and believing in what comes next. It's been the honor of our lives, Glenn and Becky Taylor.
Cheering from our courtside seats, which, by the way, we get to keep in the divorce.
We did negotiate.
We're very happy about
yes.
that. We do have those courtside seats, so you'll see us all the time still. Yeah, so it's done. It's not done, but it's done. It's clear. And
how would you rewrite this if you were put in charge of the PR statement, Judd? What would be Glenn highlights when we kept the Timberwolves from moving to New Orleans in 1994. What are some of the things that they may have missed in that statement? That
boy. I would say
to Joe Smith.
I would say, remember all those great years, 2000. How we traded KG, despite the fact that originally he did not want to be traded. How the team, to all my coaches, starting with Kurt Rambis, to all of my
to David
Hobos,
Kahn.
starting with David Kahn. I want to thank you for everything. To the people who advised me not to get a new building, but to renovate the concourses at Target Center, a fabled building, one of the most popular basketball buildings of all time. It's the Wrigley Field of basketball, so we couldn't get rid of it. Yeah, that's I mean, there's a lot he missed there. Let's just say that.
Well, the big news that came out on Friday, and this is, I don't know how much fans really, like, fans care that it's the Timberwolves organization, and I do think fans are very excited for new ownership. Beyond that, like, the people that, well, there's some great people that work behind the scenes at what's it called? Mayo Clinic Square. Mm-hmm. So CEO Ethan Casson and COO Ryan Tankey, who are, I mean, for Ryan's been there for like 20 straight years, I want to say. Ethan was there in the early 2000s, then took a job, 49ers. He worked high up with the 49ers, and then he's been the CEO of the Timberwolves since 2016. And they announced, so they essentially have run the business operations side, and they've been ingrained in this organization for a long time. But they're stepping down after the sale closes, so just in the coming days, they will be out. And they announced their departures to the Timberwolves staff on Friday morning, according to John Krasinski. And I just want to highlight something here. This is classic Glenn Taylor here. That statement was nice, and 30 years, and of course he has to highlight, and they have to highlight, well, wait, just remember, we prevented this team from moving back in 1994, and that's great. Yep. You don't get to sit on that for 30 years. But Glenn has been, throughout his entire tenure, totally oblivious to the ripple effect of his decisions. Glenn put these two guys, maybe they wouldn't have made it, maybe Mark and Alex come in. I can tell you that Ethan and Ryan had a great relationship at the start of this thing with Mark and Alex 3 years ago. And maybe those guys come in, even if there is a great relationship and it's not weird behind the scenes, and they bring in their own CEO and COO, and maybe the fate was the same. But Glenn tries to stubbornly kill this deal. What was it, 2 years ago now? Whenever it was, a year ago, 2 years ago?
I don't remember.
With no viable legal ground. Yep. And it creates an irreparable rift and tension behind the scenes, because Glenn is back there. Listen, like, we are drawing a line in the sand, and they are now the enemy, Alex and Mark. Even though legally they're still in line, now there's more hurdles and hoops to take over the franchise. So you've got the CEO and the COO that are watching billionaire mommy and daddy fight this thing over. Yep. It's like, well, the guy that currently writes my paychecks, I guess, like, what are we now? I guess, could you be sort of sneaky and savvy and play both sides with billionaires on either side over 2 years? I don't know. But Glenn Taylor has such a long history of making short-sighted, oftentimes dumb decisions without thinking about what the impact might be. I joke about Joe Smith a couple minutes ago. Joe Smith's a great example. Let's do this under-the-table deal and subvert the salary cap. Not thinking that, A, you're going to get caught, and B, it's going to cost you multiple first-round picks during Kevin Garnett's prime to build your team out, right? Going back on, so Flip had a verbal agreement to let Kevin Garnett into the ownership part of the franchise after KG retired, and maybe that didn't get communicated properly to Glenn or whatever, but like Flip dies, and Glenn decides, no, I didn't make that promise, not thinking about, oh, you're going to alienate the most important and only relevant player in the history of this franchise.
Who already didn't like him, who had to be convinced by a Flip to come back from Brooklyn because he already despised Glenn. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Yes, and this is just that, like, to me, this is such a classic way for Glenn Taylor to end the last year or two. It's instead of getting $3 billion for this franchise, which it's now worth, the Lakers just got $10 billion. 4 years later, he's still stuck getting, and he'll be fine, only $1.5 billion, while essentially costing key employees their jobs with the franchise because he made people have to draw an awkward line in the sand. So Glenn Taylor bumbling on the way in, bumbling throughout 20 years, and now bumbling his way out of the franchise with no idea the ripple effects that he's causing throughout.
But he's still got a seat, so that's the most important
I
thing.
guess he gets to watch from courtside. He gets to watch
games.
Yeah.
It will be, but now the trickle down of this entire thing is going to be really intriguing to watch, because I think, once the president goes and his chief goes, now you're going to have more changes there. It's going to be, for the most part, I would guess, Mark and Alex have picked people or have people that they see as being good in positions of power. So the Wolves, and this is not a bad thing, but the Wolves are about to change from what has probably been at times way too much of a ma and pa shop to a big business. Ticket prices, be curious to see where those go. There's just a lot of things because of how Glenn operated. There were actually a lot of things that didn't change. Unfortunately, in some cases, they're going to change now. So the next few months are going to be really intriguing to watch as Mark and Alex set their game plan. And keep in mind, since they won the arbitration, we haven't heard from them. Like, they couldn't really talk. So like, there is a ton of stuff to be asked about the direction of things. It's funny because it feels like, because of Tim Connelly and Chris Finch, the basketball operations is in good shape. Like, I think it's formed. I think it's exactly what these guys want for the most part. But as far as like a business goes, it's on now, because now things can change there. Now, fortunately, to their credit, though, they did have a significant influence in changing the product on the court. But there's a lot of stuff now around it that's going to change.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how quickly do they try to push a new arena. Is that going to be something that happens in terms of the public discussion and discourse about it early 2025-26? Because right now, you never know. If you have a bad season or something goes haywire, like, the best time to pounce, either if you're looking for public funding or trying to get people, rich people, excited about investing into a big real estate project, is when the team is at its peak popularity, which it is right now with the fans.
And we still don't know. So they definitely got supporting minority owners with deep pockets. But like, is Bloomberg all in as far as like, hey, here's $1 billion, guys, go? Or is Bloomberg like going to be in but not totally in? So there's a lot of questions too, because when you bring Michael Bloomberg into the fold, I think the league is like, whoa, okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that's cool. But we still haven't like heard or gotten an indication of what is his financial involvement going to be, because a guy like that could come in and write a check, and now privately financing the arena becomes much, much simpler. Yeah. But those are questions.
I think the two biggest areas or questions about finances are going to be, one, the arena. Okay, how much is a new arena going to cost? And are you going to try to privately finance 100% of it, or are you going to try and get the public, because everyone feels good about the Wolves? Yeah, okay, let's get lawmakers to. I just think even when the Vikings had a hell of a time for 20 years getting a new stadium publicly. Now they did, but it got really contentious, and at one point there were some overtures about, well, LA is looking for a team, and it never got quite to that level. So the arena side. Does a Bloomberg, or do they have other partners that are outside of the ownership of the team that would come in and help create a private fund of money to invest in space in a building? But the other area that's more specific to the actual team and the performance on the court and what fans are interested in is, even though you're out of the second apron most likely this year, you're still going to be well into the luxury tax to put a good team on the court. And because the Timberwolves, with their old building and their sort of lack of local TV money coming in, it's not like the Wolves have a waterfall of revenue coming in compared to other NBA teams. They do fine. But I think they were operating at a pretty big loss last year because they were in the second apron and had to pay so much in luxury tax. Mm-hmm. So new ownership group, until there is a solution for more revenue coming in with a new building and more suites and all those things in club rooms, will they be willing to take a loss potentially multiple years in a row on this team to keep them above the salary cap, and it may be like flirting with the first and second aprons? And who funds that? Is that something that Mark and Alex fund themselves? Does that money come in through minority owners in part, like the Bloombergs? I think the controlling owners have to pay that luxury tax. I don't think you get to take that money from I think that's a rule in the NBA.
Get it funded through?
I think it's a rule that the primary owners, the majority owners, have to pay those luxury tax bills.
So Bloomberg might accidentally fall on the sidewalk and leave 10 mil there, and A-Rod's like, I found 10 mil.
$50 million Venmo charge.
It's mine. It's mine. My only guess on your second part is, I would think that if Tim Connelly, if and when he signs an extension, and it certainly appears he's going to, that he got some assurances about that, right? Because like Glenn
look, they're budgeting on
now.
that.
I feel like Glenn being willing to take a loss was all based on I want to keep the team. Like if Glenn hadn't sold the team and Glenn was still in charge, and by a miracle of God they got this good, okay? I don't know that Glenn takes the second apron losses if he's not, in the midst of trying to keep his team.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one, but yeah, there's a lot of things I think that are about to change, and they're not all going to be immediately evident, but a lot of it I think will become stuff that the public cares about.
Yeah, and just to put a bow on this, like back to the beginning, the gripe about Ethan Casson, Ryan Tanke, again, maybe they would have been out either way because when a new ownership group comes in, oftentimes you want to hire your own people. But the fact that Glenn's last act was belligerently trying to roadblock this sale from happening with, as it turns out, no legal ground. And then over that 2-year period, essentially telling these really important employees who run the business,
sure,
you must ride or die for me. We're all going down together. Like it's just classic Glenn Taylor. Wreckage everywhere for
but he saved the team.
30 years. He did save the
Just
team in
remember, he saved the
1994. Yes. Yep. So, all right, boys. Well, there's your...
Anybody got any Timberwolves news?
Sorry, Judd. No.
No more?
I mean, there's probably more, but that's all we have time for here today.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So
But don't worry, tomorrow, Flagrant Howls will be back. The draft is tomorrow night. So we're just kind of on watch for, are they going to make that pick for themselves? Or are they going to make that pick for somebody else and trade that player? Walker Kessler style a few years ago.
Walker Kessler.
Is a big trade coming down the pipeline? I don't know. We're just going to be on watch for you guys all week here on Flagrant Howls. For the Sports Dad, for Dex, I'm Phil, and this is a Timberwolves Lifestyle Podcast. See you guys.